Good day, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Regenerati News Hour. Your chance to dip into all things Regen Network, the ecosystem, the people, the projects, explore around, ask questions. Really nice to have you here. I'm Dave Fortson, along with Gregory and Rebecca. I'm actually going to be dipping out for a little bit, so I'm going to hand the duties over to Gregory and Rebecca for the rest of the hour.
Can you record?
I believe this is... Yes, it is. Dan is dutifully recording today. Twitter has still declined to give us the recording native option yet, and I assume that is going to change soon. But otherwise, yeah, we should be recording, and we'll publish this on our YouTube channel, assuming everything goes well. But otherwise, Gregory, Rebecca, the floor is yours to talk about a really exciting development in the Regen Network development and larger Regen Network ecosystem.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Hey, everybody. Hey, Rebecca. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, super excited. So I think we're hoping to dig in with some of the folks who've received grants in this latest grant round, and just kind of again do an open and dynamic conversation with the community. Dig into all the news and all the exciting things that are moving. I know I've been having an enormous amount of exciting conversations about geospatial data with the Shamba team and Acorn team, which has been very exciting. Been jamming out in the R&D Inc., the Regen Network development team context about some of the Regen Ledger 3.0 stuff that's happening. And and then just super excited to talk with some of the land stewards and some of the scientists who we've been lucky enough to start building a community with. So Rebecca, I'm gonna hand it over to you and see if you want to add anything to that. And I think you've been doing a little bit of the scheduling and invitations for who's going to come up with us. So I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Gregory. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I think we've moved from absorption mode into activity mode, where we're starting to really connect with all of the grantees and each one kind of getting a point person within R&D to be working more closely with. But I think overall, we're still very much in awe and humbled by all the folks that showed up, everyone who applied, grantee or not, and feeling really grateful and inspired by all the activity, really all of the hard work that's happening on the ground and in everyone's places in the world. So I want to thank everyone for how they've showed up. We're really moved and excited to explore what this could look like in the future on a lot of different levels. The projects really spanned the whole community, and I think revealed all of the dynamic work that's happening. And so I feel like we could easily spend an hour just going through the list, talking about each and every one of them from all the different categories. But what I think would be really awesome is for us to kind of pull a couple from each category and talk about them. And I see some folks here that have joined from each of them. So letting you all speak for yourself, and other R&D folks that are on the call that might want to share about others that they're super jazzed about. But I'd love to start by talking with Paige Emery. She is on the call and had an awesome application, and it's sitting in a really great geography. It's an urban project with regenerative metabolism for a new urban geography. So I'd love to start off by grounding us in a project and real work that's happening. And instead of giving a synopsis, I would love to invite Paige to the stage to let her tell us about her project. And then from there, we'll kind of move into showcasing a couple of others. Paige, how does that sound? Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, of course. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, coming in great.
Okay, I'm doing a project with Sarah Scott, and She wasn't on Twitter, but she said she might try to make one just for this. So Sarah, if you are here, jump on. But we are developing research frameworks to help communities implement regenerative practices into urban environments and leverage contemporary decentralized technologies. And a lot of the motivation for this project came from a community garden that I started in my neighborhood with a houseless community. And it was completely like open source mutual aid where anyone could participate as long as they just did work in the garden and like brought a plant or planted something. And it ended up getting torn down by the city. And so a lot of questions that came out of that were, why aren't there more community gardens, and why are they so difficult to start? And when they do exist, why aren't they more accessible? And also, how can people be more encouraged to be a part of them? And, you know, there were just so many practices of mutual aid and reciprocity and community land stewardship that go within it that should be more encouraged and normalized in urban areas, especially as right now it's an estimated over 80% of the US population lives in urban areas, and by 2050 89% is estimated to live in urban areas. And, you know, with this number increasing, we have to be acting upon how cities are functioning in relation to climate crisis. And although we are doing research based out of LA, we are going to be working on resources that are can be applicable to urban areas in general. So yeah, so the first part of our research is using GIS sensing technologies and to build like a database of all of the climate effects of community gardens and other urban ecological landscapes to provide, well, one incentive, but two open source resources so that for people to be able to build more, and also while building models of what future urban ecologies could look like beyond just what the normal community gardens are right now. And we'll also be seeing what forms of decentralized governance can take place throughout this project, as very obviously mutual aid networks of gardening have a lot to offer within the same realm of ideologies. So there will definitely be a lot of like overlapping influence there. And, you know, underlying the expansive community gardens is just spreading practices of caring for and listening to the earth that cater to much needed planetary reciprocity. Thanks.
Amazing.
That's so awesome to hear. I feel like how layered it is really reflects like our goals to have layered efforts where you have the social benefits that you're trying to focus on and employ, and these deep earth benefits and how they relate and move together and evolve together. It's even more complicated, it seems, in an urban environment. So I think we're really excited to see all of that moving. Thanks for sharing. I would love to spend a few minutes for folks that have questions to Paige, like specifically about her project, before kind of digging into some of the other categories. Do folks have questions, curiosities about this awesome LA bioregional work that Paige is undertaking?
I'll start with a quick question, and maybe audience members, just raise your hand if you want to pop up, or you could even tweet us, and we could try to monitor things there. So Paige, super exciting. I guess a question that it's sort of an image as you were talking. An image that I got was just of a set of tools in which urban communities can come together and envision how they'd like to transform their urban landscape to something that's more food secure and more green and, you know, has more open space, and then maybe kind of create their own community incentives and, you know, and maybe even eco credits around that. Is that am I kind of getting it right that that's part of the inspiration that you all are going towards?
Yeah, it can look like that in so many different forms. So definitely like resources of how to start up community gardens and expand them, as well as just looking at like the best practices for soil, as we all know biodiversity is like Earth's most precious resource. So just like kind of sharing like how can just anyone, like how can you just be working locally in your neighborhood to be taking part in that, and and just really spreading more resources about like decentralized governance practices as well. And that is something that we're going to be working on like as the research develops to see what form that takes. So
awesome.
Could I follow-up question? I've done a lot of community gardening in my day, and it's really hard to get people all on the same page. And sometimes it's such a microcosm for how governance should operate. So I'm excited to see how that works. But what are you guys seeing as some of the challenges ahead, like some things that do you think that you guys are really going to have to hash out as you move forward?
I think the major challenges would just be any of the bureaucracies within city policies. Those were the challenges that I've faced previously. Like I was saying, when I started, the community garden I started was a guerrilla garden, and it was on like an empty space in a park. So that there are kind of obvious reasons why that was taken down. But before I started it, we were trying to find the legal process of starting it, and there was just such a high threshold. So we are also looking to like how can we look at what policies need to change, and or how to just lower the threshold to make it easier for people, because the city's full of so many empty lots and just like empty spaces that they could pop up everywhere. And or even just like in between houses, like on the sidewalks, there are so many spaces. So just mostly the legal aspects of how to overcome those barriers. And but at the same time, I guess the information needed so people know how they can like start it themselves without having to I guess depend on city planners and things like that.
That's awesome to hear. Thanks for sharing. The activity of dealing with policies already in place is something that we hear about often, and I feel like community gardens is a really visceral way to stretch and experiment. So we're excited to see that roll out. What questions are there out there? Are they hands raised? Anyone?
Looks like Timo just hopped up. I think he might have a question for Paige.
Go for it, Timo.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So excited to hear about all the awardees, and congratulations to everybody. Paige, super exciting. Personally, I have a soft spot in my heart for like building reuse, adaptive reuse, urban parks, open space, urban biodiversity. I've spent a lot of time over the last 10 years exploring how we can reuse vacant spaces, blighted spaces, abandoned spaces where a lot of people don't realize this, but land banks all over the country have thousands and thousands of properties of vacant, abandoned properties. It's a huge problem in the U.S. And so I'm just curious in terms of like, one, do you have any outreach planned with land banks? And then two, like how you see it working at like the real estate level. And that's just as a side note, that's where Basin DAO is working. So we'd love to collab with you. So I just wanted to hear your strategy around that.
Thank you for that. And we should definitely talk about collaboration. We would definitely, we're planning on reaching out to land banks, but a bunch of like, we're going to be pretty much reaching out to all like community gardens in our area and other people that are doing similar work to see how that can happen. And we will be talking to people who are doing this type of like urban planning around creating these spaces in those cities. So there will be a lot of conversation around that. Like I mean, my experience is I have a lot of experience in environmental activism, and then Sarah works in geography. So we are going to be having to do a lot of collaborations as far as getting to the level of like what can be implemented within like what you're saying, like real estate policies and land ownership and things like that. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Are there others out there with questions that want to come to the stage?
If not, maybe Timo, since you hopped up, maybe you want to just share a little bit about Basin and what you all are doing and how that's sort of fitting in. It seems like a nice logical sequence here, as you were sort of already starting to invite collaboration with Paige and Sarah and their project.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Gregory. Yeah, and again, thanks to the Regen Network team. For Basin did receive, or through my real estate company, we did receive a grant, which we're super psyched about, and we're internally building right now. Basin stemmed from my personal experience of 20 years in investment and commercial real estate all over the country, and worked in 40 different states, done $1.5 billion of volume. Worked with title agencies, attorneys, public zoning. We've done development, subdivisions. But it's, at a certain point, I realized like I'm contributing to like degradation or extraction economy. And basically I've been working with dollar stores, fast food stores, drug stores, which there's a need for that, right, in society. But I'm like, I'll let other people do that. And we cross Basin with like nature and ecosystem services, carbon markets, co-benefits, and we're focused at the real property level. So so through our lens, everything in the world is some sort of real estate, whether it be public, whether it be private, whether it could become commons, and we're using the private property laws to create global commons at scale and coming up with different monetization techniques to make projects financially feasible on the ground level. Using these new incentives and value exchanges, like with for example, the eco credits. We're super excited about the basketing of eco credits and how we can roll this stuff up and create the world we want to see with positive outcomes using these new tools and technology, collaboration tools, DAO to DAO. The groups module is super exciting. And then we're also connecting what we see is like this whole IRL, like in real life, to the metaverse of like we're working at on the ground real property level, but we want to use all the new tools with the metaverse to create real change on the ground. So Basin is made up of masters, PhDs, carbon scientists, philanthropists, business people, entrepreneurs, academics, like people who have felt like climate FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt and angst. And we're trying to give them an outlet to create real change in their community. And we're creating that change, or at least our thesis is creating that change on properties. So by buying, owning our own properties, we're going to have a nonprofit. That's part of our Basin grant, is setting up the Basin Foundation to accept real estate donations and then to develop eco credits and other monetization strategies around that, both for profit and nonprofit. So super excited to be here, and basically anything related to real estate, real property, and the financial flows, we'd love to collaborate with you all on it.
I think I get so excited about Basin DAO as being that bridging work, which we talk about so frequently, is the bridge between the on the ground, the regional, the bioregional, the species, and the digital, the online, the metaverse. And I feel like we need more and more folks like yourselves just mobilizing the knowledge on both sides and bringing them together in really innovative ways. I really like FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's a new one for me. Thanks for that, Timo. Open up for any questions, or throw them Timo's way.
I would just say, so What are the pieces, Timo, that if you're thinking about where you see kind of natural capital and eco credit specifically weaving into a business model, what are the types of eco credits? I know you've been doing a little bit of research on this, judging from some conversations we've had and your amazing building in public capacity on Twitter. What are some of the eco credit classes that you think are going to be most foundational to creating a healthy livelihood for people, as well as kind of financing the expansion of your vision at Basin Dow?
Yeah, so like the way we're looking at it is from like a holistic lens, which might sound generic, but like the work we did this summer on the climate sprint, which I'll post the link, but it's core-benefits.org. We basically looked at ecosystem services and co-benefits and carbon projects, and how can we basically like bridge the funding gaps between a climate project and climate investors, or any type of investor, impact investor. And we came up with this core benefits label, which is really just like at the end of the day, it was a 3-week sprint, and it's a holistic tool that you can apply to any type of climate project, whether that be a real property, a SaaS app, a nonprofit, anything you're doing in your community. I mean, you could even apply it to your household, like your wife. And it's it's at the end of 3 weeks. We hoped it would be more in terms of like up down metrics, rating scores, stuff like that. But it really is like a good starting point to like take a holistic view of like a project, and everything we focus on in that was like measurable. So it goes back to like the workshop, the Regen workshop of like MRV, of like what's measurable, what's reportable, what's verifiable. And so we're looking at like clean, air, water, carbon, jobs, income, expenses, balance sheet. Like, so we created just this base metric level of like what's measurable, and we hope to expand on that work, basically, Gregory, to like make those be eco credits, let's say, in some way, some fashion. And I just got off the phone with Sam this morning about like creating like a methodology around this. It's like either we pull from the new methodologies that are popping up in Regen registry, and there's basically modularity of those, and we use different methodologies to mint different eco credits or impact credits or carbon credits, but like a holistic lens. So how do we come into a property? So we're looking at it from a property level, and other people can definitely, this is like open source and other people can use it, and we want to build together. But how do you apply this like holistic lens to a property and make sure you're like, there's no blind spots? Oh, I didn't know I could monetize for water like that. Or I didn't know, like, the classic example we use is like one of the big chemical companies was doing like chemical cleanup on like degraded land, and they had legal liability and PR liability, but they weren't monetizing for carbon at all. And it's like, well, why not? Like, if they're trying to like make a project financially feasible or make it more to their bottom line, like carbon should have been a part of that. Another use case was like a big national, international beverage company, which everyone would know the name, like focused on clean water. And, like that was like, they wanted a carbon project, but what they wanted was clean water and like PR related to clean water and what they were doing in the watersheds that they, extract or use from. So Gregory, we're looking at like holistic lens and creating like these, that's why the basket functionality is so exciting to us. So like, how do you basket and bundle these basically things at the property level, roll them up to like a property level NFT, not basically property is non-fungible in my eyes. And then how do you, expose that to the greater marketplace, and then, create incentives and value exchanges around that. Like one thing we're looking at is like, keep it in the ground, like oil rights, basically. Like, who would want to pay to keep the extraction rights in the ground? So instead of like, someone having 9 years of oil and gas extraction, we obtain the title to that. And how do we get incentivized to keep it in the ground? So it's like flipping the model on its head is where we're working at.
Cool. Love it. Anybody have any questions for Timo, or shall we kind of keep cranking? Awesome. Cloud. I can't read your whole Cloud Network. Go for it.
So this is actually pertaining to Paige's initiatives of, starting with community, like getting this idea of like how can solving for how do we get people to do, adopt these holistic practices. And I feel like maybe bringing the idea of like a social networking platform, like system where, you can, where these eco credits can be like easily like understood and obtained, and like worked with and traded and and being able to easily access that. Like in terms of like even at the DAO, like at the level of like governance in communities, like communities need that kind of governance. And so it's kind of like, like just starting at the community level and, having a place where we can actually like use these, and I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Curtis Hall. I actually am from Texas, Northeast Texas. There's a lot of, farmland out here. And, it's like sitting here. So there's a lot of potential for, and I've always wanted to do community gardens around here, especially for, lower income communities and even for churches around here that are just losing a lot of faith in humanity. Just in general, with stigmas and stuff, Paris, Texas is, not the most, progressive area. And, some people don't even know about Bitcoin, or, probably 90% people don't even know what Ethereum is. So I feel like there's a lot of potential to grow here, but in a sense of solving for like, like a community garden, I liked Paige's idea of bringing the DAO system into that communities, like creating a natural DAO. It's not like online. It's not like and having that interface there for people to use, for the community members. There's lots of community in Web2. There's just a couple of community websites that offer people to communicate with each other and connect with each other and talk about problems they have. Like, I think it's a neighbor app or something. But anyway, that's just my little introduction and ideas.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Love it. And I'll pass it over to Paige in just a second, but I wanted to just give a shout out to, I don't know that they're on right now, but some more members of our community, the Hilo team, the Terran Collective, which is, they're stewarding the Hilo app. So I think if you go to hilo.com, HYLO.com, they've been building out a really, clean UX for sort of an open source social network chat, and they have a sort of bioregional. You can find people by location if people choose to share their location, so you can like pop up groups and chat and do things. And right now they've been working over the last actually about almost a year. They've been working on integrations with Regen Ledger for the representation of eco credits and to be able to use the groups module for DAO governance and other pieces. So there's sort of, some pretty exciting, and all this stuff takes time, but there's some pretty exciting slow work happening by a community member there to sort of take a crack. I also know people are working on Discord integrations and other things, so we'll sort of see what sticks, but just wanted to share that little tidbit. And Paige, do you have any reflections about, it was Curtis, right? About what Curtis was sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Curtis. And that is a huge thing that we're looking into. We are going to be building like a lot of all of our research models will be online, and we're going to have an open source like resource database that people can access in just like a very interactive and easy way. And we definitely are. It's like a priority that this information can be really overwhelming for people not already involved. So, we're going to be doing field work on community gardens and or just like urban farms and other types of ecological landscapes within urban areas. And during that process, getting feedback from everyone, just like hearing from the community on the best ways to make this palatable, easy to understand, and doing anything we can to like lower these thresholds. So yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to you more about what your thoughts and suggestions are on that. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Yes, that's amazing. Just because like I've just had felt like such a compassion for the areas that just don't know about this kind of stuff. And I'm from Dallas. I was born and raised in Dallas, so there's a lot more community like interaction. But now I'm living up here, and there's like less community like interaction with areas. And also I don't know, it's monos something, man. It was something in text, whatever. I'll have to like look it up again. But yeah, just lots of farmland and lots of opportunity to test these systems out. Thank you for sharing, and I'd like to hear. I'll definitely connect further.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to invite the Crypto Commons Association folks who just hopped up on stage to introduce yourself and maybe weave what you're doing into the flow of the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gregory. So my name is Felix Fritsch. I'm the founder of the Crypto Commons Association. We applied to the Regen Community Fund and are very grateful for the generous funding we received, which allows us to open this season the Crypto Commons Hub, which I think ties really well to the conversation we had about community right now. That was about digital means to better connect the community and weave it together. We are doing that mainly on the physical side of things. So the idea of the Crypto Commons Hub was to give crypto commoners a physical home and a harbor where we can grow our community. Now, the region, the refi community, let's put it in broader terms, is also one of the progressive communities or narratives that we want to encourage and support in our work. So we want to, I guess, extend this offer of a safe space and a continuous harbor to grow our movement and to develop narratives. I want to extend that offer to all the people in this call. We're very happy to host projects that share values with us for retreats or smaller events. We're also organizing and hosting a refi and conference in the beginning of May that is part of the refi spring events. And like all of that goes back to our first event that we had in late summer last year, where for 1 week, 60 people gathered to discuss crypto commons and how to turn an emerging community into an effective movement. That experience was really valuable to all of us. And I think all people that attended this event are now much more in connection and think of themselves as a group much more than before. And I would love to see that happen also for people in the refi community.
Awesome. So do you want to just mention where you guys are at, where your hub is at, and yeah, because I
Right.
think that's a beautiful part of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gregory. I forgot about that. Yeah, we are in the Austrian Alps, about 1 hour south of Vienna. That is directly where the Viennese plains hit the Alps, so the east side of the Alps. We are about 200 meters from the start of a very steep and beautiful valley that is called Hell's Valley, Höllental. You have plenty of mountains. You have a pristine river that brings Vienna's fresh water. You have a cable car going to the top of the mountains, about 500 meters from us. So it's also, a place in nature that is really calm and yet accessible. So it's 1 hour from the airport.
Sounds awesome. I can't wait to do some in real life workshopping with people there.
Yeah, may I just use the opportunity to say that we have opened applications for our refi on conference, and early bird tickets are available until the end of this month. That's like 5 days more if anyone here is interested. Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. So exciting. Anybody have questions? Rebecca, do you have any thoughts that you want to weave in here?
Yeah, I think as someone who is markedly newer to the crypto space, I get really excited hearing Felix, hearing you talk about the work of Crypto Commons and how it's going to be touching on so many different needs of connection and creativity. I'm curious how all of this work touches on like the producers and kind of the getting creative about the financial mechanisms and ways to like bring folks that are on the ground into this hub work that you're doing.
Well, this is an important question to us as well. So really the onboarding question. So one thing that we thought of more concretely in terms of doing projects for refi is that we want to develop, and I must say we haven't really done our research yet on how far this is already being done. So maybe it is already being done, then great. But we think if refi wants to really tackle climate change, we need to be quick, and we're going to have a huge bottleneck once all the infrastructure is set up to onboard millions of farmers worldwide within a rather short time span to these protocols. So we thought of developing educational materials in the end and training materials to do this part of the onboarding. We are also, the whole house is an experimental site for onboarding people to common protocols, meaning that we are going to structure social interaction in the house with, for example, reputation systems and other protocols like social coordination tech. Then we also want to have a test bed for agricultural IoT. And we are playing with thoughts on the metaverse, but all of that is really hands-on and in a way prefiguring the future that we want to emerge.
Nice, that's awesome. I feel like we should connect. We're really trying to innovate around like these reputation systems and how to gather the right folks around common protocols. And it would be great. I feel like the hub idea is really central to that. Like we've got to get the folks in a room together. So that's awesome to hear. Happy to open up for any other thoughts, questions, reflections.
I'm just inviting a couple folks up here who requested to chat. So Acorn just hopped up here. Hey, Acorn. good to see you up here. Do you have questions or comments?
Yeah, so we've been trying to arrange something in the refi space for F Denver, and was wondering who would be there, and if Crypto Commons would be interested in arranging something there as well.
We haven't thought of that yet, but let's talk about it in direct messages if you want.
Spontaneous organization. Yeah, do it in DM. I'd love to hear. I know there's some other things happening. And so I can maybe I'll try to tweet about that. I personally don't think I'm going to be going to ETH Denver just because it's maple season here on the farm where I live during that time. So I'll be busy boiling, but sending everybody good vibes. Maybe I'll be able to call into something. Awesome. Any other questions or just like emergent conversation that wants to happen here between this amazing, cohort? And I see a bunch of other folks in the community, so maybe we'll start pulling other people up as well.
So I wanted to talk about a conversation I had actually last night about I was actually in a space with some people that are really, really, really like big into metaverse, VR, AR, all that fancy jazz. I've never touched a headset before, and so it was kind of funny being in that space. But I could see the opportunity for people that don't have any access to like land and the ability to grow anything, like say New York or any cities out there, even young kids that you don't really want to, I guess, go out in nature too much or something. But, there's a big opportunity to connect with nature and through the metaverse. It would take a long time to kind of like reproduce natural systems in the metaverse, but I kind of want to I guess plant that seed of going forward with how we can approach this educational way of doing and possibly representing real farms through the metaverse.
Funny that you say that, and I actually want to get Crypto Commons insight into this because y'all are deep into building out your sort of like hybrid in real life and virtual space. So I'm excited to jam. But I just started a little journey sort of on a personal level. I've started working with my background is actually in permaculture design, and a big part of that is representing landscapes as they're going to become as we steward them in a regenerative direction, right? And so I was just reaching out to some of my colleagues from that sort of prior vocation, and we've started building out a digital twin of the maple farm that I live on here in Massachusetts, right on the border of Vermont, and with that exact aim to sort of be able to host people in sort of a working landscape without them having to fly here, and sort of like starting to play around with how that relates to NFTs and eco credits that are being generated by carbon sequestration, and even as a sales tool, people buying maple syrup. Maybe you want to come and see where it's produced and how it's produced, but you're a long way off, right? So anyway, starting to play around with that a little bit myself personally, and then maybe hopefully weaving that into the larger Regen Network community as it actually matures. So I think it's a great idea. I kind of think it is as a halfway house. I was also having some really cool conversations with the Strange Clan Passage 3D folks. For those of you who are Cosmos gaming people, there's some really cool stuff happening with sort of virtual reality, NFT gaming. And so I was jamming with them about like, hey, can we make a portal between these like multiplayer virtual reality games that are spinning up and my farm, and so that people can sort of like walk through a little portal and be in a landscape and be learning and be engaging and be seeing what's happening. And I think the short answer is yes. The longer answer is there's quite a bit of work to do to sort of like pull it all together. But it's exciting. It's exciting thinking of it as like these virtual spaces as a halfway, sort of halfway home between the full sort of like crazy infinite expanse of the metaverse, which I tend to think may be a little alienating from living systems and nature, to having a deeper relationship with a real landscape. Part of that is representing and making it an inviting place in between.
Ripping off of that, I think from the other like relationship end of that is that for the people on the ground. So for you, Gregory, as a maple producer, and for others that want to share their work and they don't really have a house, they don't really have a home in the metaverse to do that in an authentic way. And I think that they want to. They really enjoy talking about the changes that they're seeing and their relationship with the land. And that might be like the one of the nugget ideas to really bridge that gap and to get folks feeling like they're a part of that big infinite feeling space.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was thinking that it's kind of a cool segue, like thinking about how to bring these places from around the world into the metaverse. And I can't help but think about some of the other projects that we've granted through the community fund. Like there's a Damian Fuller, who's a Bavarian farmer and wants to do a micro farm model. And that's something where to create a model, you're wanting to invite people in, and not everyone can travel to Bavaria to do so, but there's such an appetite for learning and engaging in those permaculture and agricultural systems. So I'm really excited to see folks like Damian Fuller with a really small project being on a very different platform, hopefully through Regen, and being able to tell his story and fund. Another one is Colshan Carbon Trust, and they're doing really interesting biochar application methodology in Washington State, which is a stable form of carbon as opposed to the labile carbon that we try to measure to our absolute best efforts but can't. So like thinking about how to capture that, we're excited to see that move forward. I think that biochar along with soil isn't always the sexiest thing, but I think that we could get people really excited about it in the right
love
ways.
Biochar. I love biochar. And I kind of want to double click on that, Rebecca, and just like give the audience a window into your brain and experience. And for those of you who don't know, Rebecca is a soil scientist. And doing all this work building a community as well, but has an enormous amount of experience and wisdom in the science of soil. And I kind of want to just double click on that discernment between sort of stable carbon that, biochar is an example of, and labile carbon, which is, more transitory, and it's hard to measure the permanence, and just like the relationship between those two forms of carbon in soil and this larger, because there's such a debate. There's such a heated debate about the role of soil carbon in the larger climate fight. And I'm just curious if you want to just give everybody, like a 2 or 3 minute just like tour through that conversation and how it's fitting in, and maybe even where you see it playing into some of the grants that are moving.
Absolutely. I think it might be my favorite thing to talk about. So I did not study soil carbon when I was in grad school. I was studying conservation ag in the developing world and looking at hand tools that smallholders use to get into the ground in no-till systems. So I have a really like tactile approach when it comes to stuff and within soil and ag. And when we're thinking about carbon, we can all freely admit that it's a really one-dimensional way to account for changes from good practices and to reward folks for those practices. The fact remains is that it's still the thing that people want, and the thing that we need to suck into the ground. And what we're working with is we're working both at the edge of what we know, and the carbon in the soil. It's being sucked into the soil as an organic form of carbon. And that organic form of carbon is being used and cycled through microbes that are in those upper inches of the soil. But below that is our deeper carbon, is our more stable form of carbon that's not going to turn over as much. So the grand irony to carbon in the soil is that in healthy systems, we want a lot of microbial activity, but when we have more microbial activity, we have more carbon turnover. That's the goal would be to be able to measure deeper soil carbon, would be able to account for both forms and reward for both forms. In our work within Regen Science, we're trying to use remote sensing as this incredible technology to see with satellite imagery. But there's the frustrating limitation that it can't see deep carbon. And even though we have some really great folks that are researching deep soil carbon stores, we're trying to make sense of that landscape. And I think that's where it comes back to our like practice-based focus is like, how can we do a better job collecting data, showing how those different carbon stores interact and change over time within different ecosystems and different production systems. There's still a lot that we don't know about how climate and topography and production all interact, and certainly not ecosystems because they're so dynamic. So biochar is a really cool example of a stable form of carbon that's not going to be shifting within a soil profile or turning back into CO2. But the question becomes, how do you apply it and how do you source it in a sustainable way? So if we're talking about sourcing it from forest residues, we got to ask why and where and how. So I think with all of this, we just keep coming back to those fundamental questions to make sure that we're staying on track. But the one dimensionality of carbon is something that we really feel boxed in for and are trying to actively innovate on the ground and like big picture thinking. So soil nerd rant over for now.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, let's see. We're just about 7 minutes from the top of the hour. We like to keep it pretty crisp. You know, at least I'll need to hop off. So, Curtis, you want to chime in, and then maybe we'll bring up another couple grantees to chat about what they've been doing before we end.
I don't know. I just thought of, like, you said stable carbon, and I just thought of stable coin. I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Totally. I mean, I think one of the things that's happening here is, you know, I'm a big believer that in order to get this regenerative finance thing right, we actually need to be linking, you know, asset issuance very deeply into rigorous scientific monitoring of ecological state, which I don't think is maybe a popular belief in the larger refi movement. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it. But, you know, asking how we really quantify something like a stable soil carbon, and how that links into biochar and how that biochar is produced. I mean, the production of biochar in a way that is arguably regenerative is going to be very different than the production of biochar if you're just sort of, you know, linking it into an industrial monocultural approach to agriculture or land use. So, you know, like whacking down a bunch of forest or converting, you know, the corn stalks from monoculture maize production or something like that is not, I think, really what we're talking about here in this context. It's more, you know, low grading ecoforestry or coppice woodlot systems or integrating biochar into a much more diversified agricultural system. And then quantifying the extent to which we're turning this photosynthetic gain in an ecosystem into a stable soil form that actually sort of like actually increases the photosynthetic capacity of the landscape. And so if we can nail that right from the science perspective, then I think we can build some really interesting token economics and and up to and emerging, you know, some of the favorite stuff I see happening out in our ecosystem, just to use this provocation to riff a little bit, is actually in the creation of eco credit backed stablecoins, where communities can be linking their own sort of payment and store of value currency systems to ecological health in a really meaningful and direct way. And that's really what this is all about, right? That's what's so exciting. And I think at Regen Network, hopefully listeners maybe are taking this away, but the approach here is to really have a polycentric, diverse approach to be investing in competent, capable communities of actors around the world, to be defining, you know, and exploring this in pilots approach, where we're saying this is the way that this is going to happen. Instead, we want to say, here are a set of tools that different people are bringing together in order to pilot what it means to be realigning economic incentives with ecological health, right? And that's sort of the big, you know, the big tent, I think, that we're all under here. Awesome. Well, I want to, we're getting so close to the time. I think maybe it's going to be hard to get other grantees up. I see some other awesome folks out in the audience, but I kind of want to turn it over to you, Rebecca, to see if you have any closing observations or wraps, or if you want to sort of like call anybody out who's up here on stage to share anything. And then, yeah, we can move towards wrapping for this week and see everybody next week.